I'll let Jeff start off with make sure that people don't live in fear because of this disease. Is that correct?
That's right. I'm most concerned that this culture of fear that we're seeing being pervasive right now is driving us to disconnect from people all around us in likely an irresponsible way that is going to have long-term impacts that they are not being addressed. The long-term impacts of us disconnecting from all the people around us are toxic.
I think that, I certainly agree with Jeff that I feel like what we're seeing coming through the media, through people that we interact with, people are scared and they don't really know how to respond. And it's a very mixed personal message for a lot of people. Part of you feels like this is a deadly virus and we should be scared because everyone's going to get it and lots of people are going to die. And then the other part of you says, let's open up and be smart and move on with our life and try to figure out what the new norm is. And it's really interesting, the folks that I've been talking with, from teachers in the county and in the city to people in Richmond, to people across the globe, friends of ours, to see the different responses and reactions. And I'll reiterate what Jeff said, that I think that more damage is going to be done to people and families because of the lack of ability to connect in person. And I know it's taken a toll on our family. We were in isolation for close to 4 weeks to be sure that we were clear and we were of no harm or threat to anyone in Martinsville, Henry County. And to be disconnected from people for that length of time is really difficult thing to manage. And so much of what we do as a family is relational. We as a family believe in the power of building relationships with people to help people to grow and develop into whoever God's calling them to be. And to be at home and isolated and not be able to continue to impact the community, hopefully in a positive way, has certainly been difficult.
What is your message to people? Tracy was saying that are afraid, and Jeff and I were talking about this earlier, that have a fear of interacting with you all, even though you've already recovered from it, but they still have a fear. What do you have to say to those people?
I would start by saying, hey, you're not afraid to talk to people that have had, I don't know, the measles or the flu or chicken pox or something like that. These are all similar diseases. I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying that I am. I'm just saying that's a ridiculous stigma to attach. Just because something has been perpetrated in the media and the government, and it's a huge, big deal, which I get it, right? That doesn't mean if somebody's been recovered, they've been recovered. I think you need to move on with your life and connect to people and how that I think it's dangerous. The stigma of not connecting to people over time is not sustainable, and it is very dangerous. And that's something I just think it's not reasonable as well.
I think it's really important just to note that everyone has to be able to inform themselves. And that really is the biggest thing, because this is a free country overall, and everyone is free to think whatever they want. But realistically, there are some logical errors with someone thinking that that we are still negative, we're still positive for the virus, or there's something wrong. They just have to realize that there are facts. It's not just emotion. There's a lot of facts involved in the decision making.
Do you guys know if it was travel related or?
I'll answer as to how we think we got it. Nobody knows for sure, Louise, right? So Joshua and Emma are students at Wake Forest, right? And they were on a choir tour in the UK, and they just got back just under the travel ban, right? They came in. Didn't you leave? You left London like noon?
The travel ban, at first the travel ban while we were there was excluding the UK, so we would have technically been fine, but we got back Friday afternoon and it started Friday night. So it was Yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty sure they were exposed there, right? They weren't the only students that were exposed there. Other the folks that were on their trip also tested positive, and that they at Wake, et cetera, and other places. So we're we found that out after they were sort of back in the house, right? But yeah, I mean, that's how we're presuming that's the chain of infection for us, right?
And where did testing occur? How did that happen?
Well, we couldn't get tested originally, right? Because there was almost no testing. And remember, the protocols back at the end of March were, unless you were symptomatic, right? And you had to have, even then, you had to have higher fever and other things that made it severe to get tested. So originally we weren't tested, and then finally we were. But Tracy can talk to that. So we finally got tested at the Speedway.
Just to add on to what Jeff said, you had to exhibit certain symptoms and meet, in accordance with the CDC guidelines. And the tests were in short supply. So it was recommended by our physician that we not test, that most likely we were positive, and to just continue to self-isolate, which we had already been doing. And I finally, at the prompting of my pre-med daughter, Emma, went ahead and pursued getting tested because of an ongoing symptom related to loss of smell and taste. And it had been going on for 3 to 4 weeks. And so I finally my physician did approve me to get tested, as well as the rest of the family, if they had chosen to do so, given the situation. And so I was tested at the Speedway. And when my test came back positive, we kind of turned around and called the physician and said, let's.
Well, originally none of us wanted to get tested. That swab thing stuck to the back of your brain was not a good thing.
Right.
So, and then after we had one positive test, it made sense to go ahead and test us, right?
What was it like to live in that isolation? You still had each other, but what was that like? And, not being able to interact with people?
At first it was difficult, because like Mom was saying before, our family is very relational, just in our nature. We're very connected throughout our community. And I would say, so I guess because of that, just the nature of quarantine or self-quarantine is you can't be connected to people physically. However, we've leaned a lot on technology. I know Emma and I are constantly on the phone with our friends from school. Clara is as well. And not to mention just spending family time and enjoying our farm. We're lucky to live in an area where, we're not door to door houses. So we have our property, we have a little bit of respite, I would say, from the normal hustle bustle anyway. So that's made it a little easier, but it was definitely hard at first, especially, for somebody like me, it likes to go out here and there, check around, see what's going on, go out to eat, you know what I mean? Different things like that. It's definitely hard, but to be honest, our symptoms and all of that, and the time that we were really positive for the virus, it didn't last that long anyway. So I don't know, I guess in the end, it wasn't as, we have to know that there's an end to it. So I'm an elementary school music teacher, as you probably know, Luis, in Pittsylvania County. And that was very difficult at first for me to kind of pull myself out of that routine of going to school every day and being thoroughly involved in just kind of the comings and goings of the school day, our special events, of course, our choirs and our and just the music program in general there. That was really hard to be removed from that. Then on top of that, losing Haven and Praise, our newest community gospel ensemble, we started back in the fall. It felt like everything, you were losing it, in a way. It was like just being taken away from you and there's no way to access it, which just isn't the case, because we've been very lucky to have a lot of technology resources. And even for those that don't have technology resources in their home, they are available. Wi-Fi is available. We've seen at public places like NCI and places like that have offered free Wi-Fi and internet access. You've seen different organizations offering actual devices to students, iPads and computers and things like that. so the resources are there. So I guess because of that, and since I've kind of come to that realization, it's been a lot easier for me to still connect with my students and to still connect with members of Haven of Praise, because music has been something that has connected us, from the beginning of time, and has brought us, like I use that term, respite, and brought us peace and serenity in a way in really hard times, and just in the general times of life. So it hasn't been something. So I mean, as far as music and working with people, which are my two major passions, I've still kept them up. It's just, I've just had to be more creative in how to do it.
It has been definitely an interesting experience. So I'm a senior at Wake. So we got sent home after spring break, and obviously we never got to go back. So we had the rest of our classes online, which is just a totally different experience than going and having, world-class teachers there, or music classes. I'm in personally like 4 different musical ensembles at Wake, and so the classes are just not the same, on top of not like losing, for me, the last month and a half or so of like being with all of my friends at college before we all graduate. Like right now, we would have been, there's like a week between when you finish exams and our graduation. So traditionally all the seniors go to the beach. So it's like right now I would have been at the beach with all my friends for one last time. So it's kind of been definitely especially hard, because it's something just like seniors in high school, where it's like a time that you're not going to be able to get back. Like classes are going to start back up again for people, and like you're going to get back to school. But like for those of us who are at the end of the line, it's been rough. But ultimately, like Alyssa said, FaceTime has been such an asset in this, and technology in general. Like eating with your friends, like if I had a friend eating waffles the other day and I'm eating whatever I was eating for breakfast that day, you know what I mean? Just like being together on technology has really been a great asset. So, I mean, it's bad, but honestly, having access has been not as bad as it could have been.
On the way back from London, we got back and headed back to campus for the night. Essentially, we didn't even stay the night because we live so close to campus anyways. So we were able to just drive home that same night. But we were able to practically fit what we could in our car, or what we thought was essential. I guess that's a trigger word at this point. But getting those essential belongings and then bringing them back home. But at that point, of course, we didn't know the entire semester was going to be canceled. So looking back on that, I mean, you have the obvious insight that, if it was now, that if we didn't know what we do now, we would have definitely just brought all our stuff back. But even Emma just now got her stuff, 2 days ago or 3 days ago at this point? And I still have over a week left before I'm allowed to go back on campus and get my stuff. Wow. Just because of the way they've actually structured the system of getting stuff back. But also just in general at Wake, shifting from there to here, it's shifting out of a hyper social environment there, where every day is about those connections and those friendships. And you don't really understand, but as you're going through it there, you live through the day just to get to the end of the day and hang out with your friends. You do homework together. It's a very social experience. But now that you're here, I my friend on FaceTime, on Zoom, on WebEx, whatever it is, whatever the means are. But it's not the same, because at this point it's scheduling. Like we have to meet on a group chat and say, hey, when's everyone available to talk? Something like that. It's not something where I can just walk back into my suite and say, and just be there with all my friends. So it obviously is a giant shift in the actual, social aspect of it. But, it is what it is, and we'll get out of it eventually. So we'll make it through.
Personally, I'd like to say it's definitely really, really hard. I know, as the rest of my family, we're all very social people. And again, with what everyone's saying, using technology has been a really, really big help. I've been on the phone every single night with multiple different friends. And I know some of those people I usually see every single day, and usually we'll hug and we'll take a bunch of pictures and just have a bunch of fun in class when we're allowed. But not being with them and not seeing them is really, really tough. But like Josh said, we will get back to it. We just have to be patient.
What's recovery like? Because there is no like actual treatment, correct?
No, we were just told, we just stayed home. And for me, I mean, I think Emma and I probably had it the worst. It was like a really bad flu with a lot of coughing and that kind of thing. And it was exhausting. I mean, we're just so exhausted, right? Go ahead, Em.
I'm just going to say it really, personally, I mean, the whole thing is the virus affects everybody that it enters differently, depending on, whatever. It honestly was not that bad. And me and Dad, again, had probably the worst of it. Like I had a fever, that kind of thing, but I really didn't have any coughing, and all of my symptoms were pretty much over within like 3 days. And then after that, I was like a little bit tired for like a couple days, but I mean, and then I was fine, back to normal.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think it's different depending on who you are. So, of course, we don't want to discount the people that have been hospitalized and have had major complications from it, because that's not something to be thrown aside. You know what I mean? That it has been really major and significant. Of course, we have just been really blessed to have been in really, really strong prior health. That I think that really affected the way that we interacted with the virus, like Emma was saying.
What has been, I guess, the hardest thing about the entire journey?
Too much television, too much news. Sorry, I hate to say this, too much media, way too much government. And the fact that I can't sing and rehearse with my choirs and singers, that's been just catastrophic. For
me, like we've been talking about, definitely just, it's such a shift. We're all people, like very big people. Just like everything of my life is like totally different. Like being with my friends, even my classes, like it's not like a music class. You can't translate a choir to online. So, it's just been like being isolated, first of all, and then like having all of your daily activities be like just canceled or changed completely. It has been like, I mean, I know it's like we're in history right now, but that's been rough.
The worst for me so far has probably been, this is going to sound kind of silly, but the emotional roller coaster. I personally have had a lot of ups and downs.
Definitely moving on the academic aspect, moving from in-person classes to having, these Zoom meetings, which that's a whole nother topic, but incredibly ineffective for learning. In like, I'm an engineering student, and a lot of my classes are very lab-based and very, in person. So without that ability to actually, get in and really talk to the professors one-on-one, it's really difficult to learn effectively, at least.
The most difficult part of this quarantine has been for me an over-reliance on technology. Like I've been speaking to in the majority of this interview, it is an incredible and very useful tool. However, it can enable us to rely too much sometimes on social media and different apps. We're like on our phones all the time watching TV and things like that. Whereas before, you're relying on in-person gathering energy. For me, I'm an extrovert. So when you're around people, that gives you energy. Now you're having to gain that energy through a computer. Beyond that, from the education outlook, that's, like Josh said, it's been incredibly difficult to connect with your students, especially those of us who don't have strong internet connection or access, or maybe very, very stable home environments or situations where it's easy for us to connect to them. And then on the musical side of things, it's very, very difficult to make music virtually. It takes very strong video production skills and editing skills, audio production skills that most people underestimate. It's doable, like we've proven, in the past couple months, but there's nothing like getting together in a room with people and just singing, standing around the piano and singing. I used to do it in show choir at Magna Vista with my friends. I've done it at many churches around here, whether it's in a service or whether it's for a choir rehearsal. I've done it in my house with tons of friends. That's something that, and I've done it with my students, of course, at my school and my job. That's something that just can't be replaced online. So.
Two things that have been the hardest for me, surprisingly, not really being at home. that really hasn't particularly bothered me all that much. I'm not really sure what to say about that. But I would say the two things that have bothered me is seeing the opportunities and the education and the experiences that my kids have missed out on in the last 2 months. As a mother of 4, that is heartbreaking on many levels, to not have Emma do a regular graduation. We have a virtual one next week, but she will have a graduation in October. We're thankful for that. To not see Emma do her senior recital at Wake. Whatever things, happening with Josh in his APO service fraternity that he's a very large part of, things that he wasn't able to do and accomplish. Alyssa's graduation for her 5th graders that she is planning it on, not virtually, sorry. They are going to do a drive-through graduation for her 5th graders. But again, very, very different experience. For Clara, we didn't get to perform the musical Freaky Friday at Magna Vista. Her SOL testing, things that are not a critical piece, but something that's sort of a marker, that a rite of passage. That as a mom, I hated seeing the 4 kids miss out on so much. The other piece is being so integrally involved with the special needs population in Martinsville, Henry County, and knowing those students, knowing the challenges that those families face each and every day with their kids, needing and requiring such routine and such skilled educators working with their kids, and now they're at a loss. And that has been a really tragic piece of this, that so many of our students in Martinsville, Henry County, as Alyssa alluded to, do not have positive home environments for whatever reason, whether it's special needs or just other challenges that we all face. And that has been a really, really difficult thing to deal with, knowing that school is a place that we hope and seek for our kids to be safe and a positive environment. And to be missing that right now is really, really difficult.
Any misconceptions that have not gone through this experience, or anybody that has not gone through it, have, that you guys want to clear?
One of the biggest and most important things about that is, or about the virus itself, is all that matters is that we're alive. So realistically, it is a one of two option there. That if people get sick, it really is not that. It's not that bad. Like if someone has the flu and they recover, it's not a big deal. It only matters if there's an actual end result. And based off of our family and then our direct connections. And clearly it might be different in my own head if we knew, or not if we knew, but if there was someone very dear to us who had passed away from it. But realistically, it's an insanely low, actual mortality rate in the general population. So having these misconceptions that, if you get this virus, you're going to die, that is a huge issue just floating around in the entire world.
I think another misconception is, I can't remember the exact statistic here, but I don't think germs live on surfaces for, 2 weeks. After 2 weeks or so, they die. So basically, a lot of people feel like maybe they can't come to our house or come around us because we've had the virus and been exposed to it, which you might think logically in your brain makes sense because, well, what are you going to do? Deep clean your entire house, every inch of it? Well, I guess that's another misconception, is that the virus is not just across our whole house, because like I said, I got to get the exact statistic on that, but it dies. Surface level germs disappear in maybe a couple of weeks, if that, and we haven't even had symptoms of this virus for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks upon weeks. So it's like Josh said before, it's just illogical. And it's just illogical to to say that you can't be around somebody, you can't be in their house, you can't come and sit on my couch and watch a movie, you can't come over and make music in our music studio with us just because we've had it. Past tense, had it, So
to add to that, yeah, it is. It's, I think, a maximum of a couple days for surfaces that for how long it can survive on a surface. So, and as far as being airborne, it's like maybe a day, or it might be less than that. I don't know, but I mean, the fact that's definitely the most frustrating thing. Like when I moved out of campus, and I had friends who knew we tested negative for coronavirus, had it, don't have it anymore. They were still like, oh, don't come near me. People are so scared and they just don't understand. It's like the fear is totally just overriding any kind of logic or like looking up any facts, where not that there's nothing to be scared about. There may be like there is a risk, a real risk, like people have died, but that number is so small and that fear is just totally blown out of proportion. And it's making people not think about what it's a virus. Like it's not like, anyway, just definitely that people not understanding how it works scientifically.
The misconception that you are incapacitated, right? So we're not. I mean, like when you tell somebody, if you had called me like a month ago and I said, hey, I'm COVID positive, I'm COVID-19 positive, your very next question would be, are you okay? And actually, yeah, I'm fine. I was sick 2 months ago, right? No, I'm not sick, right? I'm not. And that's what my doctor kept saying to me over and over and over, right? You guys you're watching the news, you're watching the governor, you're watching the president. You're not sick. You're okay, right? And I think that's the most important thing to think about. If you're not sick, you're okay, right? If you are sick, you should call your doctor. If you're like concerned about viruses or cleanliness, that kind of thing, talk to your doctor. You don't go and we don't call the president of the United States and ask him, should I be cleaning my bathroom today? Or, I mean, we're not asking the governor these sorts of things, right? If you're concerned about your own medical health, talk with your physician and your doctor or their nurses, right? The medical professionals. You don't need to be getting your medical advice from the television and the media. It's you too in there, right? You don't need to be getting advice from the media or the government, right? You need to get it from your doctor. Sorry, that's my rant. I'm stuck on that one. So
I'd like to kind of try and add on to what Dad was saying. I think people really are just going to platforms like Facebook and the news and just random websites. And yes, some of those platforms do have correct information, but also if you really want like good information, I would say you really need to invest to make sure you're educated and you know what's going on. And you can't just go by what everyone else is doing. You really have to decide for yourself.
I know that a lot of people maybe don't know how to really like read like I'm a biology major, so I know how to read like scientific articles and stuff, but most people don't like that. You have no reason to. But even when you're seeing statistics like the number of coronavirus deaths, we've talked about this extensively in our house. The fact that number, first of all, is people being cataloged if they have coronavirus when they die, that's why they died, even though that's not necessarily true. And that's, again, blowing the fear way out of proportion. I mean, even the statistics that you're reading and everything, the sources that you're getting it from, to emphasize what Dad said, a physician who went to medical school and understands this, that's who you need to be getting your information from, or a nurse or any medical professional about your own health.
Okay.
I have one more other common misconception, Louise, sorry, and that is about how you contract the virus. I think there's a common misconception that people that contract the virus are, dirty, maybe like have poor hygiene, they've done something wrong, they're not taking care of themselves, they're not following the CDC guidelines of washing their hands, they're maybe going up and hugging everybody they're in contact with. When the truth is, in our case, we most likely happen to be in contact with the virus because of Emma and Joshua's travel to the UK. However, even in their trip to the UK, I highly doubt they were just all on top of everyone they were around. just normal protocols, not to mention the number of people that have contracted this virus, just even when they have been following social distancing protocols and going out wearing masks and gloves and all of that, all of those things that they recommend. So that's another major misconception, that people think there's something wrong with you, or, you weren't following the rules and so you're going to get it, or it's just not true. At some point, everyone is most likely going to come in contact with this virus sooner than, some people say better sooner than later, so we can get past it. I don't know about all of that. Not educated enough, I guess, on that to speak to that, but I do know that it's around, and probably a lot of people have it that haven't been tested, and that's another part of the frustrating part for a family like ours is, people want to not come around us because we've had it, and I want to ask them, well, do you know if you've had it? What about you? Have you been tested? Because if you haven't, then who are you to tell us? So maybe that's a bigger problem in and of itself, but just wanted to make that clear.
What were some of the things that you guys did that the CDC recommended? And what are some of the sanitation that happened before or after?
So when we got home from the UK and it was kind of scary, immediately we were all about washing your hands all the time. Mom would say that like 1,000 times a day, even if we hadn't left the house. It was like, wash your hands, go wash your hands. And I'm like, we haven't left the house. It's not like, you know what I mean? Wash your hands. Multiple times a day, we're cleaning the bathrooms, had 409 spraying all of like wiping down handles, like light switches, that kind of thing. I mean, like literally all the time. We didn't go out unless completely necessary, and it was just to the grocery store. Like we had weekly family meetings where we were deciding who gets to go out this week, like minimizing. We didn't go out, and even like restaurants that were open still, or like, oh, there's like takeout, we really minimize that completely. And still, even like the social distancing, like, oh, you can be in groups of up to 10. We weren't hanging out with people for fun, like minimizing contact and constantly washing and cleaning.
Can someone talk about maybe afterwards as well? Some of the things that happened after you knew you were positive?
We were quarantined at that point. We had a couple of friends, family who would, put some stuff on our porch if we needed, run to the grocery, whatever, until we knew somebody was clear, and then, okay, that person, Alyssa's the person for the week, or Jeff is the person who can go. But it was, we didn't take any of this lightly. Our ultimate goal, we were not ever concerned about the 6 of us being healthy and being okay. We knew we were going to be fine. Even though I'm a type 1 diabetic, I'm considered high risk, but we were never concerned about the 6 of us being okay. We were always concerned about the health and safety of our community and the people around us. And so we took every possible protocol to ensure the safety of anybody in our community.
Yeah, I want to say even before, because as we said, we had symptoms a month before we got tested. And at that time, we treated the symptoms like we were positive for coronavirus. Even though we didn't have an official test, we knew the circumstances of me and Josh, and like that we had been in contact with people who tested positive. So we, without getting tested, treated it like we were positive, followed the CDC guidelines for quarantining. And as far as that, so, and then had to follow that again once Mom officially tested positive. And until we all received our test results back that we were negative or positive or whatever, we treated like we were positive. So.
Yeah, we've basically been in quarantine since the second week of March, I think, the beginning of all of this. When
pretty much. We have gone out for essential stuff, but we've been pretty much locked down since the middle of March.
Yeah, the definition of quarantine, most people just are saying, oh, well, social distancing, as long as we keep it in groups of 10 or less. No, we haven't done any of that. We have literally been in full lockdown quarantine, only going out for essential items since the second week of March. And like you've heard probably, Luis, on just this interview, how connected we are. And so how difficult that must have been has impacted our jobs, our musical opportunities in the community. our ability to connect and interact with our friends, our family, that kind of thing. It's been really hard, but got to do what you got to do.
So this is truly before, because I'm speculating that me and I have more of this spreading in this case. But, soon after we got back, we did learn, as a nation, that London specifically was, an epicenter of the virus. And that the tube itself, which is just the metro, it's just a name for it or whatnot, was a major spreading place for there. And I know that we personally rode the tube, 4 or 5 different times while we were over there. So we were, constantly, just doing our normal level of, cleanliness and sanitation, where we're, constantly washing your hands because one, you're traveling, you're going between all these different places that are unknown. You're not just going to go around and not be clean. It's just, that's just not right. It doesn't feel right. But you can link that back to even just those few times where you've been in these instances where there could have been virus present. That is likely where these things happened. It's not just a general, we got it because, for whatever reason, realistically.
In the middle of all this, we had folks that were sick at our church, including our pastor, et cetera. And I actually did some preaching as well, right? And the reality here is it has struck me that we have to make a choice as a society right now to either live into a position and a future that is based in faith and community and neighborhoods and family, or some sort of this fear aspect thing, right? And it is a stark binary choice, right? You really do have to shift your mind and say, no, I'm just not going to be afraid. And I, of course, as a Christian, believe that even if I were to die, I'm not all that concerned. Okay, it really doesn't stress me out. I'm not even kidding. And I think people ought to consider that. But I know that not everybody believes the way that I do. Regardless, going through every day just filled with fear because you read this stuff on Facebook or listened to the governor or the president or whoever you listened to that made you afraid, this is insane, right? And it is killing people, whether you see it or not. You asked before about depression, right? So I think that mental health is a huge issue. And that connecting to people is how we solve for some of that, right? And that's just a big deal. So I'll leave it there.
Anybody else want to add anything that we haven't touched on?
As supporter of public education and being involved and integrated into such a great community as Martinsville, Henry County. And we truly love this community and the people in this community. We are very excited to be an agent for a positive and exciting yet safe reopening. We're excited to get opportunities going again musically through our church, through the schools, and have people be excited again, but safe, in the reopening process. I think that whether you want to include this or not, Luis, I don't know. I've said this, that I think the reason that the Prilla fam had to get this virus, and looking back, why did we agree for Emma and Josh to go on the trip? Why did they go? Why did we have to get this? Because of the involvement that we have in our community here in Martinsville, Henry County, that we could stand up and do this interview with you today and say, hey, we made it. We're safe. We're healthy. We're very thankful for that. We certainly don't toss aside people who suffered tragically with this virus, and there are people who certainly did. We are very thankful that is not the majority, and that we're able to tell a story, and tell a story of positivity and excitement for reopening. We also believe that we should reopen. We should certainly do it safely for our children in the community, for so many families who want to get back to their educational settings and their religious settings. Those are the two areas that seem to be, schools in churches are where people come together and they grow as people. They learn things, they connect with people, they inspire people, and they get inspiration and fulfillment. And those are the areas that we want to see come back, come back with a great vengeance, and we want to do it safely, but it is time for us to move on and step out and know that we do want to take good precautions and be smart, but there's no reason we can't start doing things together as a community again, in faith, not in fear.
Perfect. I add one thing to that, Luis. I think that we must go ahead. We're not trying to go back. There is no going back.
Mm-hmm.
There is only going ahead, and how we go ahead matters. We don't need it. We don't need it to literally. It's like crying over spilt milk, right? So we're not going back, but we are going ahead. And I think you got to embrace faith to go ahead, right? And you got to have hope. This fear thing, you got to get rid of it. Got to get rid of it. Again,
I really do. From the bottom of my heart, appreciate you all taking the time and being, courageous enough to talk to us. I believe you guys are very strong, so it takes a strong person to be able to do this, and I really do appreciate it.